If you like some brash, violent, off-putting, dark humor with some fun gore, this is for you. A pretty brilliant mix of comedy and horror. What's up, beautiful people? Happy Friday 13th. Welcome back to my channel, King Nikki TV, where I give you commentary on popular movies and TV shows in celebration of my favorite holiday that comes multiple times a year. I will be giving you 13 horror comedy movies to celebrate Friday 13th. And let's just pay special attention to my black cat earrings. Now, since I just gave you guys 20 some odd of the best horror from 2022, I figured I would lighten things just a bit, and stick to some fun comedy horror for this video. If you haven't seen my list of the best horror and thriller movies that were released in 2022, I will insert that card to the left, and I will add the video link in the description box. If you have a favorite horror comedy movie that I do not mention in this video, let's discuss it in the comment section. Admittedly, this is my least favorite horror subgenre, so there may be a few gems that I'm missing out on. So if you have any to hit me to, drop them in the comments. Now, if you are in the mood to laugh and scream, let's get right into it in no particular order. 13 horror comedy movies in celebration of Friday the 13th. Number 1, Feast, an action comedy horror from 2005. Patrons locked inside a bar are forced to fight monsters. Over the top does not begin to explain this insane and absolutely ridiculous movie. Feast is a non-stop good time, full of blood, guts, carnage, and everything you can think of that is just generally disgusting. Very reminiscent of those cheesy creature feature B movies that I love. I love how Feast plays on the typical horror movie characters, action characters, and scenarios. You will not get much of a story here. There are monsters and we need to fight to survive. That's it. No monster origin story, no understanding of any of that. It is fast-paced, action-packed, monsters, blood, guts, murder, chaos, insane kills. For a one location movie, it never gets stagnant. They are pretty much stuck in this bar for the entirety of the movie. You will definitely have fun trying to guess who dies next and who will survive. If you have problems with extreme gore, this is not for you. Feast is flat out nasty. But if you're just as sick as me, it's a good time. Number 2, Cursed, a comedy horror also from 2005. A werewolf loose in Los Angeles changes the lives of 3 young adults who, after being mauled by the beast, learn they must kill it in order to avoid becoming werewolves themselves. For me personally, this is an overlooked classic of Kevin Williamson because I always hear folks talk about Scream or The Faculty, but I literally never hear Cursed come up in any conversations at all when it comes to horror movies. So let's give this movie the respect it deserves. While not on the level of Scream or The Faculty, and with some major flaws, Cursed is still quite a gem. A really classic feeling thriller story, and the werewolves are the cherry on top. They're a bit cheesy, but in a fun way. I would say go in expecting to not really take the movie too seriously. You get blood, werewolves, solid performances, good comedic touches, and some really good suspense in moments. Cursed is a good movie that feels like it could have been a great movie. There were some issues when they were making the movie, but the good definitely outweighs the bad here. It's fun, it's campy, there's lots of style, good action, a good atmosphere that you can easily get into, and you will have fun trying to guess who the werewolf is. Number 3, Planet Terror, an action comedy sci-fi horror from 2007. After an experimental bioweapon is released, turning thousands into zombies, or zombie-like creatures. It is up to a ragtag group of survivors to stop the infected and those behind the release. Child, talk about B-movie fun. This is another one of those completely ridiculous, over-the-top, and well-made gore fest movies that I just love. Planet Terror is on the Mount Rushmore of zombie movies for me. Trust me, this is not a tired and played out run-of-the-mill zombie movie. It's brutal, big gore, big action, big talent, definitely take some major risks that more than pay off. Planet Terror is brilliantly just a mix of humor, dark humor, violence, horror. It has a heart to it, which I was not expecting, and it manages to have complete, deranged, over-the-top kills and carnage. In the midst of the carnage, there is actually some really clever and amusing dialogue. We do get an actually well-written script here, likable and fun characters. Number 4, The Hunt. Action horror thriller from 2020. 12 strangers wake up in a clearing with no knowledge of where they are or how they got there. But they quickly learn that they are a part of the hunt. A political satire. This one hits the nail on the head with everything it tries to accomplish. Now, I'm not really one for watching anything political, really, but this is so freaking fun and brilliantly done. Certainly some horror elements to the movie, but this movie for me feels way more action thriller comedy way more action thriller comedy. I love how unexpected some of the deaths feel. It, like, as you're watching, it's just like you're introduced to characters and things are happening and it's just like, oh wait, so that person dead? Some pretty cool kills in this movie. If you don't like the opening scene, you likely won't like the movie. The Hunt is definitely one of those hate it or love it type of movies. Really epic showdown at the end. Of course, we've seen The Hunt, humans for sport type of story done before, but The Hunt is really in a league of its own, in my opinion. It is absurd. It is eccentric. It is brash. It is ridiculous characters, smart script, and with a message that does not bash you over the head. Or does it? Number 5, Idle Hands, a comedy fantasy horror from 1999. A teenage slacker's right hand becomes possessed with murderous intent. Have you ever heard the saying, idle hands are the devil's playground? Well, that is pretty much this movie. Very 90s in a good way. Idle Hands is pretty perfect dark comedy horror. Even though it gets pretty disgusting, grotesque, disturbing, there are some real laugh out loud moments. This is one of the many reasons I will always just have love in my heart for Seth Green forever. This movie is definitely not for everyone, but if you like some brash, violent, off-putting, dark humor with some fun gore, this is for you. A pretty brilliant mix of comedy and horror. And trust me, they did not forget the horror elements in this one. Number 6, Evil Dead 2, another comedy horror that did not forget to add the genuine horror elements. From 1987, a group holds up in a cabin in the woods fighting off the flesh-possessing demons. A classic for a reason. Evil Dead 2 brilliantly serves up some bloody and gruesome and twisted humor. If you are as gore obsessed and morbid as I am, the carnage in this one is pure candy. Dead by Dawn, Dead by Dawn. Number 7, 13 Ghosts. Not as much comedy as the previous movies mentioned, but there is definitely a humor to this one. A fantasy horror from 2001. A rich collector dies, leaving his house and fortune to his nephew. We have some characters that you genuinely root for and care about, some memorable and creepy, well done ghosts, good special effects, and a truly diabolical villain played by F. Murray Abraham. Of course, y'all, look, stupid decisions are made, but this is entertaining from start to finish. And while there are some good visuals, this isn't a particularly scary movie in any way, so definitely on the lighter side, but there are some good jumps and like startling moments that will kind of get a reaction from you, some good gore and kills that are easier to swallow. Number 8, Malignant, a horror mystery thriller from 2021. Malignant follows a woman who discovers her visions of grisly murders are not just dreams, but reality. Now, while Malignant isn't just flat out comedy, there is a campy humor to some of the scenes, particularly the opening scene that I just could not take seriously, and the crazy, insane final act. On first watch, I actually really hated this movie because I went in expecting a completely serious and dark tone, and that opening scene, child, it threw me off so bad. Y'all, the whole "it's time to cut out the cancer," and I was looking at my screen like, is this a joke? Like, it really took me off guard. But on rewatch, I definitely appreciated and enjoyed those more campy details a lot more. There are some story issues in my opinion, but overall, this is a really brazen and fun horror movie. Pretty unpredictable and gruesome. This one is not for the squeamish. We get some pretty freaky visuals. There is a campy-esque humor to some of the scenes, but it does have a pretty dark and intense tone, and it has what I feel was the best climactic final act of any movie released in 2021. I was just so blown away. It is grotesque, insane, silly, all at the same time. The epitome of over the freaking top in the greatest way, of course. I just love anything that's just over the top. Maybe because I am too. Number 9, Dead Snow, a comedy fantasy horror from 2029 from 2009. A ski vacation turns horrific for a group of medical students as they find themselves confronted by Nazi zombies. I know that zombie movies are pretty played out by a lot of people, but I love zombies. This one, though, feels like a step above, slightly above B movie for me. It's really well made and actually pretty clever in how self-aware it is regarding certain horror movie tropes. Even though there is a humor, the horror elements are actually pretty good, and there is some sufficient tension in certain scenes. I was definitely surprised by how much I enjoyed this when I first saw it. They definitely lean into the horror and guts and gore. So as a horror fan, you will definitely get your fill, but I would still consider it a bit on the lighter side because there is some humor inserted in the movie, but it's on the darker, lighter side for folks who might be more sensitive to blood and guts. Just know it's the darker, lighter side. Number 8, Eight-Legged Freaks, an action sci-fi horror comedy from 2002. Spiders get exposed to a chemical that causes them to grow to monumental proportions. I remember vividly, forcing myself to go and see this in the theaters when I was a teenager because I freaking hate spiders. David Arquette at his best for me. I love him in things like, or roles like Scream or 3,000 Miles to Graceland or Eight-Legged Freaks. I think he fits well in those roles. A very by the numbers sci-fi creature feature monster flick type of story, but some really good humor and truly terrifying moments, but maybe I'm biased on that one. I think if you like movies like Tremors or Mars Attacks, those silly, outlandish, but well-made monster movies, you'll have a lot of fun with Eight-Legged Freaks. Number 11, The Return of the Living Dead. Y'all, I love this movie so much. A comedy sci-fi horror from 1985 when two bumbling employees at a medical supply warehouse accidentally release a deadly gas into the air. The vapors cause the dead to rise again as zombies. Guys, it's the 80s, so go in knowing what to expect as far as the zombies and the effects, which for the time period, I actually think are pretty damn good. Is it just me? I feel like this movie has aged well. This movie is really freaking silly, but it's actually far better than you would think it is. Even now, over 30 years later, it still holds up in my opinion. Like I just said, we have a fun group of characters who are all pretty easy to like. These are not the typical insufferable teenage characters. Sufficient blood, gore, and mayhem, and real laugh out loud moments. I definitely say if you haven't, you should give that one a chance. Number 12, The Babysitter, a comedy horror from 2017. When Cole stays up past his bedtime, he discovers that his hot babysitter belongs to a satanic cult that will stop at nothing to keep him quiet. I was very pleasantly surprised by this one. The humor in this one is so freaking good. Who raised you, Rick James? Why is he shirtless? That's your first question. Just about every joke landed for me. Like I was pretty obsessed, particularly the token black character. Lord, the way I laughed when it came to that character. Just everything was top notch. This is one of the very few movies with a cast of teenage characters where I like everybody. Such a good mix of humor and real deal violence. They really went there in my opinion. Look, some-ish with the story ain't make no damn sense. But I went into this blind, didn't see any previews, didn't know anything about it, and I really loved it a lot more than I would ever think a person like me who typically doesn't like anything with kids or teens. Number 13, Freaky, a comedy horror thriller from 2020. After swapping bodies with a deranged serial killer, a teen discovers she has less than 24 hours before the change is made permanent. Pretty much Freaky Friday, but with Vince Vaughn as the greatest teen girl ever. Y'all, look, child. Vince Vaughn played a teenage girl better than the teen girls play a teenage girl. Now, while it is a pretty generic story, you will guess everything before it happens. This slasher comedy is an entertaining way to kill some time. The one thing I ask of generic slashers is to at least give me some fun kills, and Freaky does just that. Vince Vaughn playing a teen girl. Blood, gore, crazy kills. Do you need anything else? Now, as an honorable mention, I have to add my number one favorite horror comedies of all time. Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight and From Dusk Till Dawn. I try not to repeat movies in these videos, so since Demon Knight and Dusk Till Dawn were on my list of best movies from the 90s, I didn't add it to this list, but if this video is your first visit to my channel, it felt like blasphemy to not mention them when speaking of horror comedy, because they are just top tier. Like, I can't pick one over the other. They are the number one best horror comedies for me. And if this is your first visit, check out that video where I rank the best 100 movies of the 90s. I will link the card up top to the left, and I will link it in the description box. And if you are in the mood for more horror on this Friday the 13th, make sure you check out my Halloween playlist that includes 31 horror movies for every day in October, the best bad horror, as well as 13 horror series to binge. You can also check out my horror movie review playlist. If you enjoy my content, please make sure you hit the subscribe button, like and share this video. As always, thank you so much for supporting the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.